This week on the Shred School, we're going to be combining two tricks for the first time, the half cab and the fakie shove it, to make the fakie big spin. Let's do it. This week on the Shred School, we are going to be doing our first complex skateboarding trick. That is not a technical term, but what I mean is that we're combining two tricks. Luckily, we've picked the easiest two, the half cab and the fakie shove it, so let's get into it. To do the fakie big spin, you absolutely need to be able to do a shove it pretty comfortably. You don't necessarily have to be doing it one way or the other, but as long as you can do one, if you can roll either normal or backwards, that's good. The trick, because you're spinning, you start going fakie, but you land going forward, so it's not necessary to have both. As long as you have one, you are in pretty good shape. The half cab is helpful, because you are doing a half cab with it, but you don't have to pop with this trick. So being able to roll fakie and pop that half cab and get straightened out in the air and land, that's not really the same thing. As long as you can roll backwards, do a backside kick turn, that's fine. So that should be enough to get you in the ballpark for this trick. To do the fakie big spin, you want to set your feet up a lot like you would for a normal shove it, not necessarily the pop shove it. You don't have to pop this one. The way I normally have my feet for a shove it is my front foot pretty sharply at an angle like this, back foot about here. I do make a couple of slight changes to it. I straighten this foot out a little bit, because since we're going this way, having my feet tilted in a way where I face that way makes it a little bit tougher. So if you straighten this foot out slightly, that helps to a degree. Also, my back foot is usually a little bit less on the tip of the tail. I try to cover more of the tail to keep it flat. One of the difficult things with this one is to stop the board from flipping. And if you have really solid contact with that tail as you start, that should help make sure that doesn't happen to you. Now, the technique for this trick in a really basic way is picture doing a fakie shove it, landing on the tail again and pivoting. Now, you can do it that way completely as two separate things. Do the shove it, land, and pivot. Or you can do it completely in the air. The board does a full 360, you spin, land on it straight, no pivot or anything like that. But most likely you're going to be doing something in between. You're going to do most of the spin in the air, then land and pivot the last part of it. So you've got your feet in the position that you would that you're comfortable with. You want to, just like you did with any spinning trick, you want to start with your shoulders somewhat. You don't need to really wind up and throw the board all that hard, but this one does require a bit more spin than the last tricks we did, because not only are you and the board spinning, the board is spinning 360. So you are pushing the board to go extra as you spin too. So that can make it a little bit more difficult. Like more spin has to go into this trick than the previous ones. But you want to get going, start that spin, start with the shove it. You want to land. If you can land about here, like land about sideways, that's not so bad, because you can land, step back to the tail, pivot, and actually land it. Because one of the difficult things with this one is landing with your weight on the tail so that you can actually complete the trick at the end. So as long as you land enough spun that you can quickly step back to the tail and complete it, then that works fine. As you get some more practice, you'll be able to land directly into that, and you can land a bit more smoothly. Now, just because the trick is simple to do doesn't mean that it's easy. There are a couple things that can go wrong. The first thing is that the board sometimes has a tendency to flip, and you're never going to get so lucky that you get a full flip and you end up doing a big spin flip. It's always going to do a quarter or a half, and you can end up tripping over the board and getting hurt that way. So we talked about this to a degree at the start, but it's mostly comes down to where your feet are placed. If you have a more stable position, you don't have your weight really hard onto the edge. You want to have it more just in the center of the tail. So as the board starts to pivot, you don't have pressure, you don't have weight. The board isn't starting to tip. You want it to be a lot more flat. Now, that can be difficult because you're spinning, you're trying to throw the board, you're trying to like spot it in the air, keep your eye on the nose as it turns around and becomes the tail for you, and to land back on it. So there's a lot going on with this one. But if you work on where your feet are, try to have a more stable sort of placement for them, that'll definitely help with the board flipping. The other issue that can come about is landing and slipping out. And in fact, I got hurt, probably the worst I have in this whole course, kind of. I actually broke my foot. We'll talk about that in a couple weeks. I got hurt pretty bad on this one because this was before I started to film. I don't have a clip for this one, but I was trying the trick. The board spun all the way around, landed completely straight. I didn't spin the whole way though, so I got my front foot on, I think back foot here, just like on the ground, and the board shot back. And I fell down, slammed my knee really hard on the ground, and it turned purple. So that can be an issue too. But that wouldn't happen if I didn't land perfectly straight. If you're trying to aim for 75%, you land slightly at an angle, you can still land. You can still, roll away from the trick if you're not perfectly straight. And I would suggest doing that at first. Landing perfectly straight, getting your whole speed onto the board as it's completely straight, that's a little bit more risky. You might slip out more. If you try to land a little bit, not completely spun, and then kick turn that rest, that'll help with control. That'll help you not slip out as much, and hopefully you don't get hurt like I did. You can advance this trick by going faster, landing it smoother, and you can also try to add a pop in there to get a little bit of height on this one. It is a weird one to try to get height on. It's not really like a trick you would clear a gap with. It's possible, but it's not very common to see. You can also, if you're feeling especially spicy, try to do it rolling forward and spinning and landing backward. That is a lot harder. That one is probably going to take you some time to get to that point. If you do, though, I have a trick tip for that specifically, to do a normal big spin to fakie. My tip of the day is to set up a skate bag. Now ideally this is like a backpack or a camera bag or something like that. I just use a reusable grocery bag. You'll see this in the back of my clips often. This one actually ripped. But what's in my skate bag, not just cameras, not just backup chargers for the cameras and extra parts for that, and stuff for cameras. I got a skate tool in here, wax. You can put extra bolts, like hardware for your board, things that might break. It's very helpful to have all this stuff just set up and you grab it on your way out. Your homework for this week is to try to do some street skating. For the most part, you've probably been in your driveway, patio, skate park, something like that, but I would like you to find a street location to skate at. Ideally something with a waxed curb, because you're going to need that next week. But that's a big part of the fun of skateboarding, is finding a new spot. I used to have this favorite spot. It was just the driveway between two different parking lots, and you could do tricks on it like a bank. Used to have a ton of fun with that, and that's a lot of the fun of street skating, is finding a new spot. So I would like you to do that. Also, when you get your trick this week, make sure you post it on Instagram with the hashtag ShredSchool101. I'm going to look through all those. I'm going to find my favorite at the end of the course and give them this prize pack from Quasi. And also, if you need a little bit extra help, there is a blog version available on radratvideo.com. Next week, we're going to do our first ever grind or slide trick, the no slide. Looking forward to it. I will see you then.